Southwest Fire Academy was established in 2015 as a response to the recognized need for quality, safe, and affordable fire and rescue training in Ontario. This is not your average fire college. SFA has high standards for their students, and it is their mission to teach and produce qualified, ambitious firefighters who are prepared to work hard to serve their communities. This is not a diploma mill. This is where you can learn strategic, aggressive firefighting from passionate, intelligent instructors who never forget why they were made to do this job. SFA is an accredited private career college that is regulated by the Ministry of Training, colleges, and universities, with a memorandum of understanding with the Office of the Fire Marshal. This means that SFA is an approved training provider with the OFM, and the programs are recognized in Ontario. Check out their pre-service and expanding selection of course offerings at southwestfireacademy.ca. Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 103 in Multiple Calls. I'm Scott Hewlett. When positive intent is known, it opens opportunities for trust, grace, forgiveness, communication, and growth. As in any relationship, it is the fabric of the family of the fire service. Why you want the job, why you're instructing, why you're fighting for change, and why you made decisions on the fire ground. Things won't always go right, but you can always be striving to do what's right. Here's my chat with Joshua Graham. Start by telling me where you grew up and a little bit about your family.
I grew up in Orangeville, the west side of the GTA, just north of Brampton. Mom and dad, sister, just one sister, younger. She's a teacher now. Grew up in like a really conservative, like Christian home, and the church was a big part of our life. I think it was a good place to learn morals and values for me, but then as I got older, I moved away from that side of things. My wife's from a family as well that was like brought up in the church. And so we come from a similar background and understand where each other's families are coming from and things. And so that was always big for us. I was big into athletics as well. Played a lot of different sports, hockey and lacrosse are the typical ones, but did baseball and rugby, volleyball, some rowing and track in high school, and kind of spread it around. Yeah, mom was a bookkeeper for a friend of ours company for a while, small business, and then eventually transitioned for like a not-for-profit charity, doing their books for a while. And dad was a firefighter for the city of Vaughan, and always had a second job or something going as well. So mom stayed home with us a lot when we were young, and then back to work as we started to get a little bit older.
He volunteered before you were born?
He was in Hillsburg for a while. I think like after they got married, they lived there, and he was on the volunteers there. There's a pretty funny picture of him in his dress uniform and me as a baby. And there's a Sparky mascot there with us, and it's my mom in the costume. I'm just losing it. So great. I was exposed early. So there's always a pager or something. And then even growing up, we were always down for meals with the crew or Christmas parties. Back then, the department was a lot smaller, so you used to get to go hang out with other people's kids and things and get to know them. And actually, it turns out now the crew that I'm on, two of the other guys on that crew, one was my dad's like captain and acting deputy chief's kid, Colin Bromley. He's on my crew now as my acting captain, and Taylor Hewson was another nepotism case. We all ended up on the same crew together, but our parents all worked on the same crews as well, which is kind of a cool connection. It's always been there for me. I was never pushed into it, but it's a good fit, and I'm glad I did it. So,
how was school for you?
I did well in school. I enjoyed learning. I've always been a curious person, so I like to know why though as well. I'm somebody that would always kind of be curious about things and pushing for answers and want to know, but I was always pretty active and hard to sit still. My grandmother gave my mom ADHD pamphlets when I was a kid and stuff, right? So I ended up being put in a 1 day a week, like gifted program, short bus or whatever as a kid. And so that was interesting. I did that for a few years. I didn't want to do it full time. I thought being removed from my friends would be hard socially. My parents agreed with that. So I did 1 day a week for a couple of years, and it was really good. We got to do some different field trips and work on projects that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do in my normal class, and I didn't really get behind. So grade 6, I went back to a normal classroom and just did that. Through high school, I did well. I kept my university level classes as high marks, like B plus A's type of thing. I didn't struggle, which was nice, but I didn't have to try very hard either. And so I probably could have done better, but I also recognized that I had a little bit of skill and just like to coast and procrastinate and leave things to the last minute. But with sports and everything else going on, our family being involved with the church and agricultural society growing up, we're always like volunteering or being put in places, or I always had jobs. So it was busy growing up, but yeah, it went well for me. I guess it was grade 11, I decided fire was going to be a main focus. And so I didn't pursue the university level classes. I just got good grades in the college chemistries and things, and took a year off after high school, and then went to Lambton College for paramedics first and then fire.
In grade 12, you had written that the principal saw something in you and grabbed you for some work.
That was a weird situation, kind of an odd thing to explain to your classmates at the time. But yeah, I was approached to be the student trustee representative for the school board for Upper Grand, which is like, I think they have that role as a formality. Like they have a student representative there for their schools. And so I was expected to make a report and deliver it to the school board trustees once a week at the meeting, and just kind of sit and observe and take notes. And if they had questions from a student perspective, I would be asked to comment on things. But it was a good opportunity to be around people that had higher positions within the school board and see a different side of that I wouldn't have normally seen. And I think in hindsight, it set me up for some confidence in the positions I worked in, like in the fire departments.
Nice. And you mentioned sports. So what sports and hobbies were you into?
I did soccer and baseball as a kid growing up. Never did hockey. It was pretty expensive then, is even more so now, right? But so we stayed busy with that. I played rep volleyball in high school. In the OVA, I did some rowing, some track, a lot of rugby in the later half of my high school's career. So, and then I did some men's league rugby as well when I was in Sarnia, living down there. Got a couple pretty good concussions and called it quits on that. Yeah, it spread all over. Like I was never really amazing at any one specific thing, but a fairly athletic kid, and I was coachable, I think, and that was a good skill. I'm trying to put in my daughter.
You said you built a lot of character being on losing teams.
Yeah, we had a couple of soccer seasons where, you don't win a game kind of thing. And that can be frustrating, but it was good lessons in that for sure. I was a competitive kid. I still am. I think I've figured out how to get a handle on that, but it used to be really hard to be on a team environment. Like in individual sports, you have a lot of personal ownership over your performance, and I can be hard on myself because it's my fault kind of thing. But I think in a team sport, you got to swallow that, and those were good lessons at 11, 12 years old to recognize that you don't always win and you can't always affect things, and you kind of just have to roll with it and do the best that you can do in those situations. So yeah, it sucks in the moment, but everything like that, you look back at it in life and you think like, oh, that was something. Like, yeah, you just have to try and take what you can from it in the moment and not get too down on yourself. But I had a volleyball tournament where I got tossed out of the game because I had an outburst at the lines person. That it was actually my sister who had like volunteered to do the lines, and it was, yeah, I got a little carried away there. But yeah, you learn from those things for sure.
Being good in school, did you have a lot of teachers around you that were mentoring and supporting you, building you up? I mean, obviously the principal saw something in you too, and with the gifted program, but were there specific people? And then obviously your dad, but maybe some people outside of school as well.
I had teachers growing up that just stood apart. I was fortunate to go to pretty good public schools where the parents' council was quite involved, and there was a good relationship between the teachers and the families. And it was a rural school, so there's a lot of kids bussed in, so everybody knew where everybody was from. Like the kids all spent time outside of school playing with each other on the farms. But the teachers were great. Like I had a few repeats that were fantastic teachers. A guy named Willie Brown in elementary school, and he would get us to do like NCAA brackets and things, or he'd go off on these side tangents and rant in the morning, and we'd all think like, oh, we got him off topic kind of thing. And then the next day we'd have a quiz on what he talked about the previous morning. So it's good. It forced you to be on your toes. But then through high school as well, had some really good coaches and teachers that helped give me good advice. the direction of my life that I was going, not just in sports, but also like off the field. And then, yeah, my dad was a big and still is like a big mentor in my life in terms of his fire career, the work ethic that he puts forward. Like part of the reason that fire I decided was such a good fit and would be was just the way I saw how he was able to raise our family and like what that was like as a kid, what it was like to have a dad that could go on field trips with you and be there at sports things. And you knew sometimes he wouldn't be, but you know what he was doing. And I think that was noble as well. And then when he wasn't home, he was working and we'd be doing chores around the house. And at the time, sure, you hate it as a kid, but again, you look back on those things and he's preparing you. So my mom's father was a farmer growing up, a school board custodian for years, and just one of those people who could fix anything. And I think I just was a magnet on him as a kid and watched the way he worked in the shop or would hand him tools and just clean a deer or anything like that, right? So I think having those kind of constant mentors through my life were really important. And actually, like in that period after I finished school, I was at home and he had pretty bad prostate cancer for the second time, and he was in that palliative phase. And they were looking at hiring nurses, and I didn't have a job at that point, and so I just spent some time with my grandfather. I got to spend a lot of really valuable time picking his brain and just chatting, seeing him be vulnerable and learning a lot from that. So, and I think that compassion rolled over into what I do in my life now.
What jobs did you do before you got into fire?
As a young kid, we had a guy who lived across the road that ran like a flower stand and had a few acres that he managed himself. But my dad had me over there picking rocks for him and picking weeds and pinching dahlias off and things. So I learned a lot about flowers pretty early. I did landscaping in the summers from the time I was 14 till 22 kind of thing. I worked at a law firm part-time in high school as like a front desk guy. I did a little bit of filing for them, for a family friend in town with a firm. So that was interesting, a little more of like a professional experience there. Built dry stone walls for a little while, spent some time in Scotland, like learned from some master craftsmen there doing that. That was always my like a escape from EMS plan eventually, but the startup was a little more, it's a little more niche than some things. So, but yeah, jobs all over the place, but usually fairly mechanical or hands-on, that kind of thing. I think I couldn't stand the thought of working in a restaurant or doing the same thing every day in a factory or working at McDonald's. Like as a kid, I didn't want to do that. It was, although I did work in Boathouse for some bar money while I was in college folding clothes and things like that. So that was my only step outside that room.
You guys had a kitchen fire when you were growing up?
We had a wok on the stovetop and it flared up and smoke, and you get the big rollover. I have this memory as a kid of like watching TV and seeing this like flash on the wall, and I was probably 5 at the time, and I looked over and you could see the roll up from the grease fire and things, that big flare up. And so she ran us out onto the street and handed us off. It was in the winter time. She handed us off to a couple strangers that were walking past, like, my house is on fire. And she went back in and she grabbed the wok and like brought it out and dumped it in the snow and stuff. So, but anyways, probably saved our house from burning down. But the fire department comes, and my dad was on days that day. So, of course, he shows up. This is before cell phones or anything. You can call and let your husband know he's coming home to the trucks or something. But he pulls up, and the trucks are outside the house, and they're just venting at the time. So he was pretty shocked. But I remember bringing me out to the trucks after everything was cleaned up and getting to go through the cab and things. And that was probably one of the earliest memories I have, seeing that like on scene type of thing. We had a car accident. I think we came home Christmas one year too, and came across an accident. And I remember him like getting out to help and just being in the back seat watching and not really understanding what was going on. But I always liked it. I was always drawn to it. Thought it was cool. So my take your kid to work days and my civic class placements and things, any kind of hours I could get was always trying to get in with the fire department. So, and that was back in the day where they bring you along on calls and things too for those days.
As a co-op.
Yeah, it's great. And now I work with a lot of the guys that I met then or got to be experienced. Like I was Josh's dad's kid, like for a few of them for a while. So
what was the process of getting on like when you finally went after it?
I was about 5 years of applying to fire departments. I did paramedics first. So I thought there's a training chief, one of Dad's chiefs at the time, told me might as well go get it. It was in that phase where they were looking for it as one of the main prerequisites. And he said, you can look for 2 jobs easier than you can look for one. So did that, got paramedics first, then took pre-service, and then started applying. So I got hired in a smaller rural paramedic service, Dufferin County. I did that for 10 years, I guess, part-time. But then I was able to continue applying. I got hired Toronto EMS in 2013. I was living downtown at the time. I was working downtown at the time. I took a ton of overtime. It was a full immersion, but that was great, but short. So then as soon as I got hired in Vaughan, I dropped Toronto and just kept Dufferin EMS part-time. But that was, got the EMS job after like 2 years, a year after fire I got on for that, and then about 5 years for Vaughan. So wrote a few other tests. I was a little bit picky. I didn't go all over like some guys do. I had opportunities here. I was working, and I knew it was just a matter of time, I think, of applying and just getting a couple interviews under my belt that I'd eventually get in somewhere probably. So actually, I got accepted on Mississauga within like a day or two of being accepted in Vaughan. And part of me decided, like, I thought maybe I would go to Mississauga just for the fact that I didn't have any help getting on there, right? So it was kind of nice to feel like I did it myself, but I would be driving through Vaughan every day to get to work in Mississauga anyways. So I thought, no, like, Vaughan's a good place, been good to my family, and that was the easy choice for sure.
How were the rookie years, and was there any comments or pushback about the way you got on? Because maybe that's in our heads too, right? I mean, I ended up on the same department that my dad worked for too, so I had this sort of similar experience, but sometimes it's in our head and it doesn't actually play out with people around you. Sometimes it does.
We work for a department where we do have a fair amount of family members that are there, and I think there's some ribbing about that, but it's the culture. Like, we know what that life looks like. We know kind of how to fit in. We know how to talk and how to work and what that looks like. So I can confidently say that all the people whose kids work there right now, awesome. So, and completely deserve to be in those positions that they're in. So on our department, maybe it's not so much of a thing, but my dad worked really hard to have a good reputation and have the respect of his peers. And he never rode for captain. He was always like a backseat guy, but he was a hard worker and participated in training and always helped out around the station, and just like a happy, cheerful guy, and able to be a good storyteller and stuff, right? So he told me before I got on that he'd worked 30 years to build a reputation, and that it was my responsibility not to ruin it in one day. So that's a lot of pressure going into your first day recruit class, as well as the pressure of knowing that people are going to be watching you because you are related to somebody else that works there, and they know of them and they know of you. And instead of getting nervous and backing away from that, or I think like there was an opportunity to kind of show that like I was good too, like I deserve to be there and make my own way.
It's interesting how it's almost expected and celebrated in some larger New York departments, or maybe in the States in general, but up here there's always a bit of a who helped you get on kind of thing.
Part of that too, I think, is that we have departments in this area and like Canada specifically that aren't as old. And so 40 years ago, Vaughan was a small composite department with a few stations and dirt roads that are now turning quickly into a pretty big urban center. And so the transition, like everybody knows everybody at that point, right? And it was who you knew to get on when you're smaller and in those building block stages. And so, but I think in those bigger departments, they take 400 candidates like in a recruit class, right? And so they want people that know what the job takes and are prepared to do that. So, and even now, I think it just shows you that that culture is important. That knowledge of what the job is about is important. The people that are showing up to do it are people who grew up with it, that know the value, how great a job it is, like how great it is for your family, how great it is, like in a social aspect. I'm getting ready to go up to a cottage with our crew for a couple of nights, right? Like just finding ways to connect, have that community built around you. We know the value of that. So we want to be a part of it.
Did you enjoy recruit class?
I did, yeah. We had a really good group. We did a split group, which was kind of strange. They did 12 of us started. 6 weeks later, the other 12 of us, they had another 12 begin, which was odd. There was like a rivalry between the two groups. It seemed like we were 6 weeks ahead, but it was a 12-week recruit class. So there was a bunch of overlap. Great people in both groups. The platoon that I was on, we worked in the same group before throughout the whole recruit class. And although I don't see them often, I'm still pretty close with all those guys. and you have that interesting bond that gets formed in those early days, right? But shared hardship, mutual suffering. It was right at that turn where I think the old guard of push-ups and drilling and yelling you down had gone by, and it was a much more soft approach in terms of like, this is your family, like we're a family group here. There was a good balance of both of those attitudes. We had a couple older guys in there that were still smoking cigars, handing you propane tanks out of the cage and things, right? They left us with a good balance. We did live fire at the end, Class A stuff, which is rare now for our department anyways. So that was a great experience. After that, I was sent to a hall in Thornhill, and I was a white cloud. So I didn't see a lot of fire for a while in my first few years, which was a running joke for a while. But it was a pretty strong white cloud.
What was your first station?
I was stationed at 7-1, which is like Thornhill area. We call it the concrete jungle, which now is kind of laughable. I was like, I would never want to wear that T-shirt somewhere where other people would be like, "Oh, concrete jungle." Like people would be like, it's a lot of like 5-6 story nursing homes and things. So it's not true, not compared to what we have now. But yeah, it's one of the first stations in the city built. It was a mixed crowd, 2-truck haul with an aerial and a pump. At the time, it was like the rope rescue haul. Like we would do Stokes basket rigging off the tip with an attendant, and that was like the extent of what our rope rescue capabilities were for the city. I had a revolving door for captains, for officers for those first few years. So it wasn't a whole lot of consistency there. I had six officers in 3 years. Eventually, I think I didn't feel like I thought a firefighter should feel. After a couple of years on, I was starting to get disgruntled about stuff that I had no business being disgruntled about, like complaining about things or moaning about calls. Like it was a medical station. Like we ran medical calls more than anything. We had medical calls and high-rise alarms and elevators, and the demographic in the area too. They weren't like overly thrilled with us. We'd get station visits and things, but often you were more of like a nuisance when you'd arrive, like to help out and things. So it just didn't have the same feel I remembered growing up, and I was looking for more of a challenge and a different call volume. So I transferred to Station 7-2, which is like more or less in the middle of the city. After that, another 2-truck haul, but they ran a rescue with a Quint at the time.
Did your paramedic background help it with medical calls? Were the guys leaning on you a bit more for that?
The Toronto experience really was a big eye opener. Like, I mean, I think I did more in the first 6 weeks in Toronto than I did in the first 6 years that I worked in Dufferin, right? So, and it's much more independent. Like it's just you and your partner. There's more trucks on the road. There's less hands-on from supervisor staff and things. You show up. I love the Corps. I worked right down 40 station in Toronto, 40 and 45 mostly. So we were in the Corps. And the people that were there wanted to be there. Like if they didn't, they would have moved out to the peripherals, but they had good attitudes. You knew you were going to be busy. You knew it was going to be crazy, and I loved it. So I had a great time. Saw a ton of cool stuff and talked to a ton of patients. And I think that exposure helps. Like when you're on a fire truck and you can walk in and see a patient before the ambulance gets there and know how to judge sick versus not sick, like that's an asset. And how to talk to patients, because we know our skill set is limited as a firefighter. Like I have a blood pressure cuff in my bag. So when I'm stuck there with somebody for 5, 6, 7 minutes making small talk, like how do you sound professional and keep the conversation flowing while still getting information and help them feel supported in that moment as well, right? So as much as I was a white cloud for fires, we had a lot of pretty wild medical calls. So guys didn't like me for that. If I was on the back, it was usually something crazy, but we worked through it as a group, and I really appreciate that about the fire department versus EMS, like having that group there that you can rely on and talk things through. Like as a paramedic, you're either the driver or the attendant, and that autonomy is intimidating sometimes, and you got to have the confidence to be able to make your own decisions. But on a fire truck, like I can go in with a crew of 3 and almost talk things through, just talk out loud. And if somebody raises an eyebrow or asks a question, like cause you to pause, then I think there's definitely value to that. But definitely makes the debrief after easier as well, having more people there to put that on. So
were you guys doing symptom relief or symptom assist at any point?
Yeah, we do symptom relief and symptom assist as well, like with the Ventolin. But those have been newer, I guess, added. And I think people are always hesitant to give it. It's like the paramedics are in the drive to really need to get this ASA into this person. There's value to and their reps too, right? Like it's the opportunity to get a questioning, to get a couple patient contacts, to feel a pulse, like to not feel a pulse, to know what that feels like, right? So we had a like a conscious CPR one time where it was a CPR induced consciousness, right? So we show up on scene, VSA, start doing compressions. Guy sits up, stop doing compressions. Guy drops again, right? So now it's like continual compressions pass through. I've had 2 of these in Toronto before, so I knew what it was, and we just kept working through. And even though the guy is trying to push us off and talk at that point, as the paramedics came in, they were like, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, "Just watch." We just stop. And I'm like, "Okay, keep going," kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's like every patient contact is like just filing it away in that bank and the same with fire too, like any incident. So our department's not that busy, so I think it's important to try and file those away and make the most out of interesting calls and talk about it as a group afterwards, because we're just not doing the volume to be able to really get a handle on some of those wilder things. So
You eventually moved to a rescue truck?
I was asked out of recruit class, like, how do you feel about ropes? And I was like, I don't know. I don't mind them. I think that's fun. So, but at that time it was just chapter 5, like I said, the stove stuff. And a couple of people in the department who were trying to steer us towards a more advanced rope program, but there was pushbacks and health and safety and committee groups, and like it just tangled. So I went to the station at the rescue hall, and so now we're doing more heavy extrication type stuff, airbags, lifting. There was also the water rescue hall, so we had an inflatable tuna and the Mustang suits and things. My captain at the time there, Scott Hankins, he's like was a Royal Marine back in the day, and like likes to push a pace through the day, and I appreciate that. Like that was something Dad always said, that between 7 and 5 p.m. in the day, like that's your work day, and you're there to work, right? And after that, like relax, take time. But if there's something to be done, then do it. And Scotty was always good for driving around or going over to the training yard to do something, or just throw the airbags under one of our vehicles or something, and find some way to turn drill into a day. Some people thought the pace was a little bit too much, but I didn't mind. Coming from where I was coming from, it was a nice change. So that was a good example there. And then slowly we've been adding more of the rope skills to that station and kind of building it to the point where now it's become the designated truck for our rope rescue, and still for water, but we're moving in a more advanced direction on that side of things too.
So then why the decision to transition into training?
That came sort of as a frustration with the rope program stuff. We were continuing as a department to like work in that same direction. We're trying to put together SOGs and things for different rope rescues, but like our SOG was 40 pages and more of a manual and it was just, no one even looked at it, right? And so every platoon had a different way of doing things. Even the way you'd set up like a low angle basket litter was like argumentative between crews, and well, should be this way or should be this way, and people wanted things black and white. Our equipment was outdated, and I could see the potential, like where we're going as a department in terms of like how it was growing and the high-rise capabilities and we needed to have. So I was a rope rescue instructor at the time. We did a couple courses with Spartan Rescue and Brandon Fife, and those were great. And I learned a lot from that. When COVID started, there was an ask for some of the rope instructors to take the initiative to try and build equipment lists and new SOGs and figure out a way to develop a program for our department. And so they had too many people in the trucks and needed some people to stay home. And so I thought that sounded like a cool opportunity to work on this stuff and spend some time with my family. So I did that, worked from home for 6 weeks, working on that rope stuff. And then when I came back, the training deputy at the time, I had some conversations with him encouraging me to maybe consider a position in the training division, that I could continue to keep working on this stuff potentially and move some of those initiatives forward. So the position wasn't imminently available. I'd applied for it before and gone through the routine just to see what it was like, but I wasn't successful at that point, which in hindsight, I'm glad of that again. But there was a position available. I guess that was 2019, 2020, I applied for it. 2022, 21, the fall into 22, there was a position for full-time training officer. I switched in at that point, just to try and continue to work on the specialty rescue stuff and move that forward so that people that were actually at that station would have consistent quality training with good equipment, and the program wouldn't just fizzle out. We had good people and good crews on those trucks, and they wanted to work, but there just wasn't anybody in that position at the time to really drive that forward, right? There was too many other things happening. They were getting diluted, and so it always got put on the back burner. So I was fortunate enough to be given that portfolio when it went in the training division. And so, yeah, spent the next couple of years developing and implementing the current like rope rescue program. And it's still growing and building. We're working on running an in-house certification course this year for all our crews. So not just shift instructors, but we're actually running like everybody who would be on that truck at that station is going to go through a off the truck 4-day course this spring. And then they'll get to write their certification if they don't already have it. And then that puts everybody on a good base layer. I've been trying to make 3-year plans for most things. So break down a skill set into a 3-year plan quarterly, and then just build. And then people know what's expected. They have a framework to work from. And it's worked well, not just in like special rescue stuff, but like any firefighting discipline, looking at like engine ops and search and rescue or firefighter survival, all those things can be broken down over that like 3-year quarterly model and lets people know what's expected.
And you got to spend some time with recruits. How was it going back to the class in that role?
I love the recruit classes. That's a lot of fun. So took a big chunk of that portfolio as well. Like doing the firefighter training. We had some other awesome acting training officers that came in as well, Chris Fisher and Dan Milne, and we gave them a good program. I think we were able to cut out a lot of like the ifs of fluff, and we hired people that were already supposed to be certified and qualified are different, totally different things, capable. But we had 12 weeks with them. The first class I did, I had a little bit less of a role, but in the second one, more of a leadership position within that. And yeah, it was good. I think you just be honest and humble and have high expectations of the recruits, but at the same time, let them know that this journey is constantly like learning and making mistakes, and I'm getting better. I'm for sure a better firefighter now than I was before I went in the training division. To go into a recruit class and to recognize, like, I didn't go into training because I thought like, I'm awesome, I'm going to be a training officer and tell people how to do it. It was like, no, there's a hole and somebody needs to push. Was it Chad Kane from Boise? He came with Aaron Fields, and he said when he went in the training division that he thought he could either sit on his nuts or stand up. So he stood up. So I think it was kind of the same thing there. But with the recruits, you can't fake it. Like, I mean, you can fake it, but they'll know. Like, you're going to get people in there that have more experience than you in many areas. And that's the cool thing about the people we hire now. But I also think that I got a good lesson in like how to be on top of things. Like when you're struggling to tie a halyard in front of a bunch of recruits expecting you to nail it on the first time, like that's a humbling spot to be. So you step off to the side and you make sure you get it right for the afternoon session or whatever, right? But the second time around, yeah, like, and at some courses, worked on some things, had some specific areas I wanted to really make sure I was bang on with them, and was able to bring in some seconded help and really bring in the right people to teach the right subjects. And I think that's important too. So yeah, but I love it. And then now being back on the trucks with them, it's pretty funny. One guy, Taylor, on my crew, he's in the back seat with me now, and Charlie from the one before. And those guys, they're switched on dudes, man. And it's a lot of fun to get to see like what you put into them then kind of showing up now and them asking you questions. Like, you've got all the answers and I still got to be like, oh, I don't have a clue, dude. Like, but we're learning together. It's awesome. I went back to a crew that like I had the seniority that I probably could have picked to go to whichever station or crew at that station I wanted to go back on that rescue truck. But I went back to the crew that I was on before. There hadn't been that many changes in bodies, but it's a good core group of people, and they all care about doing a good job, and they care about like getting better and learning. And that, I think that's the most important thing. Like, we get along well socially, like inside, outside work. Our families know each other. We're going camping together in the summer this year, but they want to do good, and they want to learn a little bit every shift. And that's what I want to. So I don't have to go somewhere and fight against people that are pushing back all the time. And I can come in and be overexcited about things, and they just like smile and nod, and like they do with me too. So it's good.
Did it give you a bit of patience too with the other divisions or the processes that are in place and what the chiefs are dealing with, how you actually get change made, how you buy equipment?
Yeah, a good look behind the curtain. That can be intimidating for people on the floor to come into a situation like that. And I was for sure. But I think, again, like back to when I did that student trustee stuff in high school, like they're just people. They're just people coming to work every day trying to do their job as well, right? Some of them are better at it than others. And you get to learn people's quirks and what they need to feel supported and what you need to do with individuals to try and like get information or to find good relationships with them, right? And everybody's a little bit different. Like you have to be a chameleon in that sense. It's hard to get things to happen if you never ask, right? Like they'll never say yes to this, or like, oh, they'll never say yes to this, but they might. And the more prepared you are with rebuttal and challenges and ways to overcome those challenges when you make your initial proposals for things, I think that goes a long way. If I hand you a problem, you're going to say, what's the solution? And if I can hand you a solution in the same moment that I hand you that problem, then you're not going to have to stew over it or find stress and things. And so then it can just happen. Like if this isn't going to take anything away from me, then sure. And it's beneficial, then go for it, moving forward. So,
or it might not happen right away. It can happen eventually, but at least you started the ball rolling.
100%. And knowing when to take your foot off as well, and not just be annoying, right? Like sometimes that squeaky wheel gets the grease, but sometimes it gets replaced, right? Or like swap it out and put it on the shelf. So figuring out people's different personalities and how to work with that, and then picking and choosing things of most importance. Like I went in and I thought there was like, oh, I want to work on this and this and this and this and this. And then the guys kind of sat me down and said, here's a list of 120 things that need to be addressed and could use somebody working on them full time, right? But we just don't have the resources. So you need to like check and assess each thing and decide like, is this a priority right now? How much energy should he put into that? And that can be frustrating to hear, but there is a place for it. And I think you can still continue to push forward and have that like 10 pounds of pressure kind of thing 100% of the time. And I think I've seen that that's definitely more effective. And it gives you patience with those processes. And when guys in the truck are like, where's that equipment? Like, how come this isn't here? Well, it was actually ordered in July, and it's the city's procurement issue that's like, they keep sending it back because of these challenges. So even the management team has done their job. It's just now it's tied up. And that's why I think those 3 years as frameworks is important as well, because you can't just shove things in, and you can have all the hopes. But again, that like skill acquisition, if we want 300 people to really grasp something and to get better at it and to change their mindset and to change their habits to make it regularity for them, then you can't do that fast. Like you have to baby step it, and you have to make them feel supported at that base level. You have to do it with minimal PPE or exertion to make them feel confident in that. And then you have to build it up. And so I think having that patience, yeah, it built for sure. And then bringing back to the crew, like we've got a captain who loves to drill, but sometimes he's got a lot he wants to do. And my wife calls it time blindness, and I'm excellent at it. But I've got way too much on my plate at one time, but just taking a little bit back, practicing one specific thing, getting confident in that, making sure everybody's got it, and then move on. Like there's always tomorrow.
Were the crews pretty receptive to you? Were you teaching things basically aligned with how they do things and maybe some new stuff? Or was it the whole, well, training does it that way and we do it this way?
Yeah, we're fortunate that there wasn't this way really, because there wasn't really anything happening in some certain areas. Like it's an interesting department in the sense that it was a volunteer composite department. We grew slowly, but then all of a sudden there was that big boom at the same time that a lot of the other GTA fire departments boomed as well. Like when my dad was growing up, it was his, and coming through, the station captain, the station officer was responsible for 90% of their training, right? Like we're going to look at this today, or we're going to do something like this. And that was how they did it. And then the department got to a size where they had a training division and a couple of training officers and training chief. And then now all the training initiatives are coming out of the training division. So crews will rotate through, they'll work on this drill, this drill, this drill. But now we're getting to a point where we're big enough where that's not a reality. Like we can't have enough training staff to carry that bundle. And so people would say like, oh, well, what's training doing? Like you guys haven't trained us on this, right? And so, and if the station captains are used to that style and now they're being expected to like step up their station led training, it's easy to get complacent, right? It's easy to let that couch time creep in, and then you start to complain, and then, but I don't think anybody ever got on the fire department because they wanted to sit on the couch and complain. Like, once you get firefighters going, once you get them working on something, like if it's engaging, they'll bite it. So I think the whole thing is just coming out without an ego, talking to them as an equal, like, I'm on this journey with you. This is something I'm passionate about and I put a lot of time into, and this is what I've been able to take from it so far. And I want to pass that to you. And I'm not going to shove it down your throat and tell you you're wrong. We can talk about why you might be wrong, why I think you're wrong, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong and expect you just to buy that, right? And then I have to be able to demonstrate it and show you that I'm capable in order to buy your trust. And then I have to like allow you to do it in a way that lets you be successful with it. Because if you're not, then you're just going to be annoyed that I'm showing off, essentially, right? So I have to show you it's that easy. So I think a lot of things with our engine operations side, we went from high pressure combination nozzles, same as a lot of the other Ontario fire departments over the last few years. And we made a switch to straight stream smooth bores. We have a TFT vortex nozzle on it with like an adjustable fan tip, which I'm not thrilled with, but it's a smooth bore, so that's cool. And then when I first went into training, I realized that like the whole thing, try to carry it through our engine op stuff that I'm working on now too, is it's all about that like mindset of getting off the truck quickly, getting that line deployed. Like, how embarrassing is it to pull a flat load and it just dumps in your lap? And everybody's got a cell phone now. You're standing on the side of the 400 highway with a car raging in front of you, and you're digging through a pile of spaghetti. Like, people are going to see that. You're going to see that. So I'm supposed to be a professional. I want to look like a professional, like, for my own sake, right? Not just for like our citizens and for my crewmates and stuff, but out of selfish reasons. But being able to put a Minuteman bundle on our truck pretty quickly, like within a year, we had our whole department switched over to Minuteman bundles and taught for 2 deployment methods. We did a quick trial period with no straps and just a flat Minuteman, and then we made an adjustment where we marked our midpoints and added straps and brought the loops out like a Wichita bundle, so it was easy landmarking. I get that like everybody should be able to pull, but 3 o'clock in the morning, things are foggy. It's nice to be able to just see the loops and pull them. So we made that switch. The department's been doing that. And now we had Aaron Fields to come in May of last year. We did some shift instructor days. We rolled out the handling positions to the crews. So everybody's been through that. Over the winter months this year, we had everybody in and did like the theory behind water mapping and interior aggressive firefighting operations and how that potentially is safer and more effective way to protect life and property. So we all kind of came up in that safety culture era, Governor's Island, hard from the yard stuff. So I think getting people to be open-minded and to think about a different way of doing it that seems riskier but is actually safer, right? Like, that risk is different from person to person. It's all based on your knowledge, training, and previous experience leading up to that, right? Like, I don't cut holes in roofs over fires on 10, 12 pitches every day, but there are people that do, so their risk is a lot lower than me. But I think the reception has been good. I've just been humble as much as possible. Now I'm back on the trucks. A lot of these training initiatives I've been permitted to continue to work on, and as an acting training officer, and to come in and still teach these days and get this out there. So I wouldn't know what to do, I think, if I didn't get to like keep thinking about this. I got to keep my brain active. And when I was in the training division, I was thinking about fire 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Guys would message you on weekends. You're looking at videos all the time. You're like, oh, this is a cool new technique, or, oh, I'm going to try that, or that looks ridiculous. But then I come back to the trucks and I'm working 7 days a month, and it's like, now I got to shut that off, find other ways to channel that. So being able to still do some of it is nice, but it has been a good lesson in self-preservation to just like take the foot off, find some other ways to spend my time with my family.
Have you struggled physically or mentally at all, or you and your family? I know you went through a hard time specifically with your wife, but how did you journey through everything?
We've dealt with some health issues as a family. We've got 2 beautiful kids. Following the birth of my son, who's almost 4 now, she was exhausted. Like, she was having headaches. Her everything hurt, like her feet were swollen, things, right? She'd go to the doctor, they'd tell her postpartum's hard. Having kids isn't easy. She's like, I know, but something's going on. So she continued to like push and investigate. She was having like heart palpitations. She was having these like kind of episodes where she would have like a deja vu sensation, just like brush that aside, carry on, right? But being a mom is hard, and she keeps kind of getting those same messages. And she saw a specialist. She went to a neurologist, had all the imaging done. There was never any follow-up, but this is through COVID as well. And the healthcare system really took a dive in that time in terms of like patient interaction and a doctor's ability to like see a patient and talk to them and investigate. I think it became a lot more hands-off. So she was frustrated. I guess it was October. She decided this, like she had her imaging done in like January. October, she is frustrated. She wants to change family doctors. She asked for her files. They said, hold on, we want to talk to you about one of them. There was actually a tumor, a pituitary tumor on the image from the January scans. So at this point, we're like, well, now what? Like, well, you have to see a neurologist. So we'll put in a recommend, like, and now she's at the back of the line again. So Beck is very smart. She works at sick kids in the ICU, now casual, but she was full-time as a physio. She knows how to research and read a paper and things. So she had some blood work done, found out what her markers were, and was able to figure out pretty much what kind of tumor she had before she was ever talking to somebody. She found out that the best place for that was Toronto Western, so she went to Emerge. I had a friend that encouraged her to do this, but like went to Emerge and just told them what happened and what she just found out and wanted to talk to somebody. So Neuro came down and they said, do you want surgery? You tell me. I just want to talk to somebody who knows about this. So that was, I think, the Wednesday she went down, and then by the Monday of the next week she was in for surgery. So they did like a transsphenoidal removal of a pituitary adenoma, which is like essentially creating growth hormone in her body, right? So the pain that she was feeling, like the swelling and things, was actually like the growth hormone in her body, right? So, but it also mimicked a lot of the postpartum symptoms like hair growth and milk production stuff. She has been on quite a journey dealing with that over the last little while. Things are good. The cure for the condition is the removal of the tumor. So that's good. She was on like a journey of recovery there. There's been no regrowth, but there is like, obviously with some of these kind of things, there has been some like side effects lingering in the future that we've had to deal with. So the training division being able to work straight days, it really suited us for a while. Being in COVID, it was a lot of working from home. And so I was able to be there with her. I was able to make sure we had people for our kids and be there for them as well. Make sure I was home every night and able to help with those duties. And then eventually, we go back to the truck because things are just too busy at the training division, the work hours, the expectation to be in the workplace from that 7 to 5:30, 4 days a week. That puts all that responsibility right back on her. So that was never the arrangement for us. I wanted to be able to help more and be more part of my kids' lives and her life and stuff. And so that was what kind of spurred that journey there. So, but personally, I've been fortunate. I've been pretty healthy, sprains and pains, but I've never really had anything too significant that I've had to work through, thankfully.
If you had the chance to go to many conferences, do you travel outside your department at all?
I was able to go to the Syracuse Rescue Conference, the Heavy Rescue Conference last year. I did the 16-hour search, the 2-day search with Augie Matt and Larry McCormick. That was pretty cool. That's an opportunity that's not had a lot up north of the border to do that kind of training. So I maybe took a day or two off my life, but it was for sure worth it, right? So hopefully it added a few as well, right? Like with the reps and the knowledge that you can gain in a couple of days like that, it was pretty cool. I had an opportunity, like from within the training division, to go to a few. Obviously, we had nozzle forward here. I went to another one in Michigan as well because I thought, like, I got drowned in information the first day. Like, if you've ever taken that course before, it's amazing and Aaron's impressive, but it's a lot. And so I think the opportunity to go back with the expectation that I was going to help train our department on these tactics and techniques, I was like, I need to see it again with an instructor's mindset. So that was cool. I know there's not like a huge difference between like Canadian and American firefighting, but or people will think like when you try and pinpoint it, it's hard. But I think we're a bit of a blend between that like European and American style where safety is still pretty high priority and looking towards advanced tactics and new technologies and things like that. But just the fact that obviously large departments are buying in and bringing this in and trying to implement it. People are aware of the fact that like it's not Canadian or American. This is just what firefighting is, and this is the most effective way to fight fire and to work effectively as a team and to communicate and to do it in a way that makes it safe for us. So
Yeah, if you want to be safe, be good.
yeah, it's cool. It's neat to see the energy and the swing towards it, and you've taken it before. Like anybody that comes out of there, he's really good at he's really good at crowd work. He's got the ability to get you pretty fired up. But then how do you translate that back, right? So you got to be able to temper it and not intimidate your peers and annoy them.
Have you gone through Jay's Anatomy of a Push?
I haven't taken it. I've heard him speak a few times, watched some like YouTube videos and podcasts with him. I like his systems. Like if this, then this, if not this, then like how do we build those processes and simplify it down? I like that. I like Kyle's like whiteboard talks and stuff. I wasn't able to get up to see him while he was here, but it's that same philosophy, right? Like we're just box to box pane walls. And I think if you can make it in a way that people feel comfortable with and that they can relate that to, then it's easy. The fact that all these people are putting out the same message, it's showing that there's an appetite for it out there. And hearing it from one person doesn't mean you don't need to hear it from somebody else, because everybody's got a different way of describing things. And you take a little nugget from each one and be like, oh, I remember that. It's like poking that grizzly bear back into the room, like there's always like little things or little one-liners that stick with you. And if you can carry those, then I think when you show up to a fire scene, especially here, we don't do fires all the time, right? So if you're on the nozzle a couple times a year at a fire, you're getting a fair amount of experience. So having simple things that you can build that decision-making hierarchy on, I think that's key. And there's a lot of people doing it out there really well right now.
Have you sort of built a good tribe around you within and without your department or outside of your department as well that you can bounce stuff off of and have these chats?
I think just having the opportunity to speak with you and even like when I left the training division, I sent you a message out of the blue being like, oh, I know you're in a similar situation. I don't know if you're too busy, but what are your thoughts on this? And you got back to me, right? Like sent messages to James Nesbitt before. Even Syracuse was sold out. I had wanted to go so badly and then didn't end up working out. The list filled up as I went to apply. Like a couple of days later, I reached out to Brass through a buddy and said, I know you don't know me, but I'd really love to go to this conference. I know you're instructing there. Is there any chance, somebody that you could pull a string and see what we can do? And he was able to get me down, and I'm so grateful for that. It was a huge, huge experience for me. And I was able to meet some of the guys that he works with and are from up here, which is cool. And then a couple other Brampton Canadians that were on that search course as well. So that was fun. But yeah, you see how small the world is, especially once you bring the internet and social media into it. Whether I specifically have relationships with people outside, or I know that if I reach out through social media, I'm probably going to get an answer. It takes that like barrier of intimidation away from it. And hearing people talk on podcasts like this, you don't need to be intimidated by that. Like you recognize that they're just people. Like they're just people doing their thing and they're happy to talk to you. I like that. It's a good thing.
Have you found social media then to be a pretty positive thing where you can curate it and keep it focused and make it a beneficial part of your life?
I have a fire department page, Dump Dog Jr. But the goal of that was like, I was now finding, like I said, I was immersed in fire 5 days a week. I'm on social media looking at all these posts by all these greats who are putting simple little things up that I think like, wow, man, imagine I could like get this out to guys out there. And when you're in the training division, you can't have in-class training sessions with everybody every day and share everything. But if we got 300 guys, 200 of them have Instagram, then if I flick something out, then if I think it's interesting, whether they want to use it or not, but at least to see it and consider it and talk about it or show somebody else, I think that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So that's all that page was intended for, was just for other guys to see stuff that I was seeing that I thought would be cool that we could apply or try, and it would be something that would work for our department. And then throw in some humor and stuff in there too. So The stories at the top are usually where the humorous stuff go because it has a short life, it disappears. But yeah, I try to pick and choose things that I think are good, or that if people take a look at or can be analytical of. I'm not trying to be confrontational or put up any posts that are opinion pieces to engage people in discussion or conversation. There's good forums for that, but I don't want my page to be one of them. So I'm typically just reposting things that other guys have posted.
And how do you find now being in the mentor guide position with people? And do you have people reaching out to you through social media and asking you for information?
Yeah, I've had a couple people even ask, like, can you send me that video that you put up before, or like using the vortex on an elevator shaft or something. Like we're trying to remember what that looked like. And it's nice, even if, again, like I'm just like everybody else. I'm just learning too. Like I'm not an expert in anything. So it's nice to know that other people have seen it and are thinking about it, right? And are using that forward. I've had a couple of guys, one guy from Oklahoma reach out to me on a couple of fitness posts that I put up and just say that he was encouraged by that. And I was encouraged by his story. He's kind of a composite worker, trying to get on a paid role and trying to get himself in shape and stuff. And I thought that was super admirable. And he's posting his journey, and man, he sent me some patches. He sent me some Fit to Fight Fire patches because John Spear wasn't shipping to Canada. And so he's like, hey man, I'll send them up for you. And then we kind of started talking back and forth there. So that was cool. But even at work, like having people that maybe before I was intimidated or were leaders on the department, now like calling and asking my opinion on something. Or at first it's kind of a strange thing, but now it's like, wow, why not? Like, let's just talk about it. So I'm not telling you how to do it, but here's what I think. So it's weird to be in that spot, but it's also humbling. And I think, yeah, as long as the ego doesn't come into it and start like puffing up about things, then that's a cool spot to be. And it keeps me engaged and focused as well, because I need to stay aware, because somebody's going to ask me something. And even if I don't know, like I want to know. Like I said, that's the kind of person I am. I've always been curious and want to know. And then once I know, I want to get better at it. I want to get obsessed with it.
Building your ops manual or manuals, are you pulling from others that are already existing out there, or not sort of trying to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, it's a hard thing. You could take it from the most specific thing, like the FTNY engine manual, like the old one that was like 300 pages and stuff, right? Like you could talk about everything. It could be like our hold rope rescue one that was 60 pages long and didn't really say anything, right? So how do you simplify it and streamline it in a way that people are going to read and actually look at and take something from and not be overwhelmed? Our department isn't really looking at doing a structured fire SOG per se. Like I think we're in a weird spot in Canada where, and some American departments too, where each truck is responsible for the same roles, responsibilities. And just because you got a ladder on top of your truck doesn't mean you're a ladder truck and that's what your expected role is. So we show up here and the blue card, everybody stands in the front lawn and waits to be told what to do. Whereas if you come from a truck with pre-arrival expectations, you know what your job is. Just before you even get there, you know what you're looking for, you know what your size up is intended for, you know where you need to be, and that makes things flow better. So we don't have that here. We're expected to know a little bit about everything. So how do you give people a little bit without giving them too much, right? Like, and I think we can build on it. So that's the idea for now, is like keep it simple. I want to have a focus on an overview of what the fire ground should look like in terms of organization. And yeah, Blue Card's a command structure and it's a great way to communicate on a fire ground, but it's not tactics, right? So we still have to know the tactics. Those officers, those first arriving officers, they're leading the charge. They're the one making the decisions and setting the pace for that fire ground. So I think having an overall picture where kind of like that Recio style, where you can break it down into objectives like that and then focus specifically on each of those things in a way that simplifies it, right? Like for engine ops, it's the triplets. Like I think as long as you come back to that, like when to use, when to flow and how much and when to move and how to do it, that's important. And then that translates to commercial or high rise or residential firefighting. It's just compartment firefighting. And then from there, you've got your search aspect and your event aspect and those things that can be added in, but be focused more in their own documents eventually.
What podcasts are on your list that you're sort of usually running through? I know you listen to this one, but I always love to pick the guys' brains about ones that are out there.
I was 1%er on my year in review of the weekly scrap last year. So,
Nice.
yeah, it was good. I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but no, it's a good thing. You realize how much time you actually like are listening, but that could be during like workouts or like cutting the grass or anything, right? You're just absorbing. So I've always been an auditory learner. I wouldn't take notes in school. I'd just sit and pay attention. Like I'd listen. And if I listen, it sinks in, and that's how I soak. So yeah, multiple calls. Obviously, I think the spread of people you've had on is great. And like the fact that I'm even getting to have a conversation with you, and you've talked with like Larry McCormick and Kyle and those guys is kind of wild. But Fire Nuggets is great as well. Scrap. Some of the old Fire Nuggets are really good to go back through those. Grabs podcast is good. Spent a while in that, and then kind of I bounce back to it every now and then because they're short and you can bang them out. I would go in the sauna and throw it on and leave my phone outside, and I just like grind it out until I knew it was about half an hour usually, and then it'd come out after that. But it's just incredible to be able to listen to the greatest minds just talk and to soak and to take pieces and little things, and then from there I'm curious, so then I go look at stuff, or I look at them. I want to go learn more about this, and it's an amazing thing to get to hear all these like different perspectives that you never would have had, right? Like before it was just my dad and his buddies and whatever they saw and whatever they'd heard, but now like the doors are open. Like you can be as good as you want. The opportunity's there to do it if you want to.
Well, it sounds like you've had a pretty good pace over your career of taking information and growing and acclimating and then finding something new.
Yeah, I don't know how to not do that. I feel like that's my jam. I get hobbies and I get addicted, and then I get to a point where I'm like, all right, I'm proficient at this, and then my mind wanders and I find something new. And I got into tying fishing flies for a while, and I'm like mountain biking. I just started jujitsu a few months ago. So yeah, it's like find something, move on. But yeah, the same in fire. Like, and as much as I was like really deep into the rope stuff for a long time and worked hard to like learn as much as I could about that and put something forward, like now my focus has shifted and I'm on engine op stuff, or we working on search stuff. And that's kind of where I find most of my time sitting. So
awesome. Is your social media IG page, is that the best place to have people reach out to you?
Yeah, Dump Dog Jr., I guess that's my fire one. That was the name on the back of my dad's helmet growing up. So I guess he was an eater and could put it away. And so they just called him the Dump Dog. So that was, and then the first crew I was at, one of the guys that was on his crew named Dave Anderson, he was laughing at me eat one night and he called me Dump Dog Jr. Then, yeah. So it's not like it's a nickname, but I thought it'd be a cool Instagram handle.
And it is.
Yeah, it's fun.
Awesome, man. I'm glad we had the time today. Been a while coming.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it.